Excellent news coming out of California. A federal judge named Robert Benitez or something like that, I can't exactly say his name, I'm bad with some names, forgive me, has struck down California's assault weapons ban, which, I think this one might go all the way back to the 80s. Especially since he, in his decision, specifically deals with the AR-15, which has been banned by name in California for decades, even though it was invented in Hollywood, which is pretty ironic. Now, this judge is pretty great. He is triggering all of the gun grabbers, which I just love to see. They're absolutely furious, even though I guess I won't bury the lead. This decision does not restore the Second Amendment rights of all the people of California. This is not going to have any immediate effect. Much in the same way that the same judge's decision striking down California's magazine ban, which I think banned anything over 5 rounds, maybe, if I remember correctly. Because I think if you buy an SKS in California, the magazine is pinned to 5 rounds, because SKSs only hold 10 rounds typically. But it might be 10 rounds. I can't remember. Either way, he struck down that magazine ban, and the people in California still can't buy normal 30-round AR mags or 30-round mags for anything else. And that's because the decision was appealed. This guy is not sitting on the Supreme Court. He is not, the highest, even the highest, federal judge below the Supreme Court. There's another level between him, which is you have the circuit courts, specifically the Ninth Circuit Court, which used to be a place where where all good constitutional rights went to die. For most of my life, the Ninth Circuit Court was known as this terrible place that, oh my gosh, if a case goes to the Ninth Circuit Court, you know how they're going to rule, which helped reinforce California's terrible, terrible laws that they like to pass on all sorts of things. But thanks to Trump, I will give him credit for this. The Ninth Circuit Court is not what it used to be. I don't think it's exactly a pro-gun haven. A lot of the older judges are still on, are still on the bench in the Ninth Circuit, but it's a lot better than it used to be. And the Ninth Circuit ended up striking down or agreeing, upholding this particular judge's decision to strike down the magazine ban earlier this year or last year. I can't remember exactly when it happened. I covered it on this channel. And that, of course, is still working its way through the courts. So I don't think people in California can go out and just buy 30-round mags. And so the same thing is true here with this decision on ARs and all quote-unquote assault weapons. This is still going to go now to the Ninth Circuit Court, who is going to hear it much in the same way they heard the magazine ban, and then from there it will certainly be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, unfortunately, when you consider that this guy originally struck down the magazine ban in 2017, and it still has not made its way to the Supreme Court, that tells you that we have a long time to go before this case on the assault weapons ban makes its way to the Supreme Court, and by then the Supreme Court might look very different. The Supreme Court might be packed by then. And so this is nothing really but, I guess, a moral victory. I mean, you can call it a legal victory, but if the law is still in place, it's hard for me to call it much of a legal victory. I mean, I guess, sure, this judge set some precedent. There's now case law that can be reviewed and cited by other judges, but I don't know what that's worth if this case works its way up the chain and ends up, and his decision ends up getting reversed. I don't know how strong this opinion that he wrote, will be viewed in jurisprudence. But hey, when you're dealing with a state that is as terrible and cucked as California, I guess you're going to take whatever win you can get. Sure, this doesn't change ordinary people's lives, but it is. It gives them a glimmer of hope for the future. It's nice to see the courts still recognize that people in California kind of have rights. I mean, this wasn't the greatest. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the way that this judge wrote his opinion, because his justification was not just blanket, hey, shall not be infringed, end of story. He was kind of building on, what was it? Not Kelo. What was the name of that? The Heller decision, in which I believe it was Scalia who wrote that. He was saying, well, you can't ban guns that are in common use. So once a gun is in common use, you can't ban it. And so this guy was kind of saying how, well, hey, this assault weapons ban denies Californians access to guns that are in common use in the rest of the country. And the problem with this is that, sure, I guess it's good for now, because it gives us access to guns that we already have. So I guess the Supreme Court is saying, well, the government can't take away your guns that you already have. But if the Supreme Court had made that same decision back in 1790, well, then we'd all still be using flintlock muskets. So in the long run, 100 years from now, this could be a problem. If 100 years ago the Supreme Court had made this decision, we would all be using bolt-action or lever-action rifles still to this day, which, would be a bit of a problem. But nevertheless, it is better than the status quo, and he goes on to essentially argue the merits of the AR-15 in particular and say how it's a good product that people would want to own and advocate. And he essentially does a sales pitch for the AR-15, which, is not really a judge's job. It's not really any of his business whether what I want to buy is a good product or not. What's his business is whether it's my right or not, and obviously it is my right. So that's all, that's it, end of story. And he goes on and says, well, the AR-15 is like the Swiss Army knife of guns. It's great for hunting and defending your home and going into battle. It does it all, and that's kind of true. It is a pretty good general purpose gun if you're only going to, have one long gun. It can kind of fill the role, that a shotgun would for home defense. If you're using frangible ammo or something like that, it has really low recoil. It's generally fairly cheap to shoot recreationally. Of course, nothing's cheap to shoot right now. In a lot of states, you can't really hunt with it because it's it's too small of a caliber. It's considered cruel to hunt animals with it. It's kind of a varmint round. It's not really a hunting round. It's a little too small for that. But in some states, you can do it. I guess it'd be okay for squirrels and gophers or little small animals like that. And of course, it's also useful in combat. But again, none of this is the business of a judge. This is not the kind of thing that judges decide. If the government passed a law saying, no more sedans, you're only allowed to have two-door coupes, and no convertibles either. And somebody sued and said, hey, you can't do that. You can't tell me I can't buy a four-door car. I want a four-door car. And the judge comes up and he says, well, you see, this is why somebody would want a four-door car. It's good because you can carry more people in the back, and you don't have to, both get in and out of the same door and flip the seat forward to let someone into the back seat. And it's much more convenient if you have children or extended families visiting in town. You all want to take one car to dinner. It's totally irrelevant. It's not a judge's. It's not within the purview of what a judge is supposed to decide. Because by that logic, if the government said, okay, well, we're going to ban two-door cars, everybody has to drive a four-door, and someone sues and says, hey, I want a two-door, well, then the judge would say, well, no, actually, it's perfectly fine for the government to ban two-door cars because, you see, a four-door is a better car for all of these reasons. It's hard for me to pat this guy in the back too much. So that's where we're at. It is a victory. I will say that. I do accept that this is a victory for gun rights. But beyond that, I don't have too much to say about it. So I'll leave it off there.